Alright, Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs, blockchain, DeFi. Everyone wants to know everything about cryptocurrencies right now. But what does this all mean? Simplifying the education around crypto is becoming more relevant and important now more than ever before. That's exactly what I'm going to try and cover in this video, and hopefully by the end of this you'll go from what crypto to wow crypto. I'll also cover my portfolio and touch upon the dark side of crypto. Having said that, what is it in the first place? Okay, so in the very beginning of time, there was no such thing as money. The only way to buy something of someone was to go up to them and be like, hey, I want your cat, and in return, I'm ready to trade my dog. So this is the barter system and was first implemented back in 6000 BC. So let's call this phase 1. But here's the issue with this system, that even though you might be perfectly happy to give your cat up, you might just not want a dog, so the trade will never happen. And that's where currency came in phase 2 in the form of coins. Because they were made of precious metals like copper, silver and gold, everyone just accepted that they were worth something. And so all of a sudden in a trade, it doesn't really matter if you don't want my dog. As long as I got coins, we can still do that trade for your cat. Even if you had no use at all for that coin, the silver, because it's a precious metal, you have the reassurances that you can take that coin and give it to someone else and trade for something that you do want in the future. Convenient, isn't it? But then coins evolved to what I call phase 3. As banks became more established and governments had control, we realized that as long as there was trust in the system, we could move away from needing to carrying coins made out of precious metals to something more convenient. Paper money. It practically does the same thing. But now, paper money itself doesn't have any value because, well, it's made of paper. It only has value because the government says it has value. Like this 200 rupee note in India. The note itself is just made out of paper and does not really have any value. But if you see closely, the issuer of this note, in this case the Reserve Bank of India, says that I will pay the bearer of this note 200 rupees. This is really just a receipt or proof of that you own a certain amount of money, isn't it? Now, the technology improved, right? We found even more convenient ways of storing and trading our stuff. We're now in what I call phase 4, where more people than ever are buying things online and using their credit cards. And now we don't really see our money anymore physically, correct? It's no more about coins or notes or cats or dogs. It's more about entries on a spreadsheet, correct? Like when I buy something from Amazon, all that's really happening is that my bank adds an entry into my spreadsheet or bank account that says Adnan now has $10 less, and then an Amazon's bank adds an entry that they have $10 more. All of this explanations leads us to where we are with cryptocurrency. It's been seen by many people as the most convenient era ever, including me. And I call this phase 5. The way we should conceptualize about cryptocurrency is that it's 100% virtual. With crypto, there is no gold, there's no silver, there's no paper. It's just really a transfer of digital assets. Think of them as literally just spreadsheets of who's paid whom. But instead of multiple banks keeping their own separate records, with crypto, there's just one enormous spreadsheet of every transaction made using the currency, which is called a ledger. Now, you may be thinking, okay Adnan, but what's all the excitement about this? There are some key advantages of a currency system like this. Number 1 is it's decentralized, which means that each and every transaction of a given cryptocurrency is all recorded on the same ledger. Now, there are many copies of this ledger, and anyone who's connected to the network will definitely have a copy of this ledger. Now you may think that all of your data is accessible to everyone on the network. Hold that thought for just 1 minute, I'll be coming back to it. But for now, let's focus on this. Have you heard of Bitcoin mining? Well, what is that? So, Bitcoin mining means that someone has set up their computer to add transactions on their copy of the ledger or spreadsheet. There are over 1 million Bitcoin miners around the world, and while Bitcoin is just one type of currency, you could possibly do this for Ethereum as well. The reason that they're doing this is when you decide to dedicate your computer's power to mine Bitcoin, you'll earn some Bitcoin as a reward. And we all know how valuable that currently is. So, the result of a decentralized ledger is that if I go into a store and spend a Bitcoin on something, then instead of just checking with one bank's records, the store checks with every single computer on this network if I have enough Bitcoins to do the transaction. And assuming I do, each computer will then give the go-ahead for the transaction, and then every single one of them will update it in their records independently. So what then happens is that you end up with having multiple copies of exactly the same ledger, which makes it very difficult to do anything fishy. Let me explain this a little bit better. Let's say if I try to hack into someone's computer that's on the Bitcoin's network and try to give myself more money by adjusting the figures on their copy of the ledger. It's not going to get through. The network will realize that 99.9% of the copies on the ledger are saying one thing, but only one of them is saying something else. So that means that one copy might have just been tampered with. This is a very clear organization of the system, and this is why people believe in it, because they see the future as open, traceable transactions. It may seem complex at this point, but as we go through this, you'll realize that for a lot of people, it's way simpler. There are plenty of areas in the world that have access to the internet, which is all you need for crypto, but don't have the access to traditional banks, which require a lot of paperwork and documentation. Number 2, the main perk of crypto is that you don't need a bank anymore. Because everything is stored by people on this ledger, you can make international payments almost instantly with no spending limits. Plus, you don't have to worry about exchange rates, interest rates, and even transaction fees are close to being zero. Now, the reason that cryptocurrencies are called cryptocurrencies is because they are secured by something called cryptography. And one example of this, which a lot of the major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin use, is blockchain. So, people often get confused by this. Blockchain is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is not a currency. Blockchain is a ledger with records of transactions that cannot be altered, delayed, or destroyed. So, the big spreadsheet that everyone has that's recording transactions, blockchain is just a way of organizing it into blocks. Each block contains transaction data that include who was paid, how much were they paid, the hash, which is a unique identifier, and the hash of the previous block, or simply put, just the last transaction that was recorded in the block. The pivot on which the system rests is that when something in the block is changed, then that block's hash will also change. You might be getting a better idea on where this is going. Since each block also contains the data of the previous block, if the hash in one block changes, then the next block will no longer have a matching hash, and thus affecting the subsequent block by becoming invalid. If you add this with what we talked about earlier, where over 1 million different users all have their own copy of the blockchain ledger, you see just how difficult it is to cheat the system. For example, if I wanted to fraudulently create a transaction that says, "Pay me money," I'd not have to just tamper with a block and every single block after it, but I'd also have to do this on at least 500,000 computers all around the world, so that majority of the computers in the network are consistent with what I have tampered with. Now, this is probably never going to happen. On the flip side, just hacking into someone's dollar account and sending money to myself can happen easily and has happened in the past. But there's a significant computing power that would be required between this and trying to hack roughly 500,000 uncorrelated computers at once. By now, hopefully you can see why some people, including me, are excited about crypto. Now let's talk about investments, the moneymaker. You've probably heard of people putting in money into cryptocurrencies and all of that. And what all of that actually means is that they're exchanging their normal fiat currencies like dollars for cryptos like Bitcoin. They're hoping that those cryptocurrencies become the next big thing and shoot for the moon, and therefore shoot up in value, at which point they could either just spend them or just exchange them back for more dollars than they bought them for. Simple, isn't it? But the one decision that someone would have to make at this point is which cryptocurrency should I buy? Bitcoin is just one over 19,000 different cryptos already, and each of them are unique in their own way. For example, Ethereum, which is the second most invested in, compresses transactions even faster than Bitcoin. Whoa! And then there is Cardano, which is considered to be the technologically superior blockchain. So let me show you what I've done. But hold on, this is where I need to provide you with my disclaimer. This is not in any way any financial advice. I'm not recommending this to anyone. I've only put in an amount of money that I'm comfortable with losing. Having said that, I have put in 45% in Bitcoin, 35% in Ethereum, 10% in Polygon, Cardano, VeChain, HBAR, Sandbox, Scala, and Decentralized, and the remaining 10% as an allocation for future purchases. These percentages keep changing. Now, let's talk about the dark side of crypto. Ooh. One of the main reasons why a lot of people don't take crypto seriously is because of its volatility. Because these currencies are so new and they're completely digital, unlike the market for gold, no one really knows what price they should be worth at. And so you'll always find crypto prices which are quite heavily speculative. They're usually tied down to news cycles, like when a dazzling article comes out about them, prices go up. However, when say an Elon Musk posts a tweet or puts them down, they go down. Two is the fact that they're not really accepted as a form of payment currently in most places. Yes, that is changing quite quickly, but when large companies go back and forth, such as Microsoft and Tesla, the adoption gets hampered. Number 3, environmental concern. See, the whole reason why cryptos are so secure is due to the concept of the transactions being verified many times by many different computers. So I think it's a fair criticism that in itself creates a fundamental inefficiency. Computing power requires a lot of electricity, but at the same time, you could counter the argument by saying that traditional banks use more electricity, or that there are new coins with better technologies that are more efficient, and that with innovations around renewable energy, the mining process can be done with zero carbon emissions. Finally, there's also a pretty strong sentiment that because there's no real policing or regulation on crypto right now, it's the perfect currency for criminals because of a misconception that currencies like Bitcoin are anonymous. But that's not really true. They're actually pseudonyms, which means that even though your actual details are not visible to everyone, your public key, which is your unique identifier, will be permanently engraved into the blockchain when you make a transaction with it. If you did find this useful, then do consider it sharing with a friend or family member who could benefit from this, and honestly, I would really appreciate it. Look at me now. Please do let me know in the comments below what you would like to learn more about. For now, my name is Adnan and I'm here to simplify all things crypto.